Hi, this is Andrea Bennett again, responding to Dundee Lee Warren's video essay regarding the tulip bubble and her take on what crisis would be considered as the economic bubble, and she stated the student loan debt. Well, the tulip crisis I'm not going to rehash, but I am going to start with the Great Depression. One of the things within your argument that I'm totally in agreement with is how the student loan crisis is embraced. It's discussed and disclosed as being a negative factor to our economy, to our society, whereas it has actually brought us out of the trenches. Case in point, there used to be a theory that was taken in consideration when we were dealing with the economy, and it was called the 70-30 rule. You had 70% of individuals that were part of the workforce, they were gainfully employed, and then you had 30%, which was part of secondary education accomplishments. Now, there was an article that was written by DeLong in 2008 that actually supported this theory. The article made mention about the Great Depression, and it stated that this was a decline in our GDP, gross domestic product. We saw employment declines, the stock market crash, subnormal production, as well as employment. And this really hurt us as a country, as a world, as a nation. It really took time because we're talking about World War II, whereas a lot of people stated that we recovered from that actual era and it brought about a lot of prosperity, yes, because we saw an increase in employment. There were a lot of individual soldiers that winded up going into war, which brought a lot of the stay-at-home disabled individuals as well as moms into the actual workforce to be able to create the production to be able to be used during the times of war. This 70-30 rule was derived from that philosophy, from those actual events that took place. It stated that we were brought back into full fruition after World War II, but unfortunately, if we did and they fine-tuned the issue that took place that brought us to the place where we had a Great Depression, where our stock market crashes, the banks were out of money, we found ourselves unable to be able to support ourselves, then it's questionable as to whether or not the Great Recession of 2007 would actually even took place. So just recapping that real quick, we were right back at square one. Stock market crash. We had a drop in our GDP, our economy, as well as we had a lot of job loss. But this time, the Federal Reserve and Treasury, they started to chip in 2008 and provide assistance to a lot of firms that, I'm not going to lie to you, it's very questionable as to whether or not they should have received money, because these companies still found themselves in bankrupt. And when they had to go to bankruptcy, they went through the whole reorganization process, as well as the money that was invested to them that raised our debt ceiling winded up being a wash. It was actually a waste of time. So, Dundee, you actually hit the nail on the head, because when you talked about the student loan crisis and how much debt is actually accumulating, you're correct, because the Federal Reserve opted to help these firms and these businesses stay afloat, but they actually didn't stay afloat. What? They kept the individuals gainfully employed for maybe an extra year, and then they were right back at square one. You had left economists, they were encouraged by taking on these huge risks without a benefit or a return on investment, whereas the student loans contributed to our economy and to our society as to where we are today in 2019. So we kind of flipped from the 70-30 rule back to more of the 60-40. We still have a large workforce that is out there of about 60% of individuals. Yes, they are going for the skilled trades because this is less time of them having to spend in school. A lot of companies companies are actually paying for them to have the certification. So therefore, we have the green technology, automation, as you mentioned. All of these things are continue to help us evolve as a world, as a country, as even just right here in the state of Michigan. So therefore, we can continue to have the competitive advantage. Whereas you still have that 40% that are still seeking secondary education. Now, yes, I get it, because you're looking at a debt, you're looking at an investment, and then it's questionable. You say, well, I'm seeing this money being applied, I'm seeing what it is actually doing, but am I going to get the most bang for my buck? Well, I have to honestly say, thus far, and not just based off of my own personal accomplishment, this doesn't take a reorganization. Even if it was a bankrupt, as you stated, most student loans cannot even be applied to bankruptcy. So what you're seeing those individuals that are aspiring to get that secondary education, they're looking for actual positions and firms that are giving them the loan forgiveness. So with the loan forgiveness, they can still be a contributor, not a burden, but a contributor to the economy by giving back after they receive the knowledge and information to help them to be able to make an informed decision to society, and there's a surplus or an increase based off of what they're able to bring to the table. So you're actually getting more of a benefit than you're receiving as a hindrance to society. So I have to agree with you. The student loan crisis really isn't a crisis. It's just more or less people needing something to talk about. Because if we reinvented, or if we did this back after the Great Depression, we might not have had a Great Recession. Thank you. This is my response to Dundee Warren. Have a great evening.